If you missed this race and you're wondering what happened, the better question would honestly be to ask what didn't happen, because that's a shorter answer. It rained. It didn't rain. The sun was out when the track was dry. We saw alternate strategies. We saw about every single car have some sort of incident, whether it was spinning out, crashing, going off course, something happening to nearly everyone. And it resulted, for the first time in his 239 race career, Nico Hulkenberg with Sauber, the bright green Sauber, he did it. He scored a podium. All these years of talking about Hulkenberg being a solid driver, a really good driver, but he can never achieve that podium. He's had a few close calls, but finally today, who would have guessed Nico Hulkenberg with Sauber scored a podium before Lewis Hamilton with Ferrari? Not me. Nope. I couldn't find anything like German or like Sauber related in my closet, so I just got this green hat to kind of focus on that, I guess. But I can't believe Nico Hulkenberg got a podium today. There's so much to talk about from this race. At one point, the battle for the podium was between Lance Stroll and Nico Hulkenberg. I'm not making this up. About halfway through the race, Lance Stroll was holding the final penalty, we'll talk about a penalty in a minute, the final podium place, because Max Verstappen spun out on a restart. Pierre Gasly was up in the top 5 for a chunk of the day. Lewis Hamilton's 12-year streak of being on the podium and his home race finally came to an end. Controversy in this race with Oscar Piastri's penalty. I mean, truly, so much happened in this race. So let's talk about some of the heaviest topics first. We already kind of discussed Nico Hulkenberg. Let's go into that more. Nico Hulkenberg has been in F1 a long time. He's even had a gap there where he was out of F1, and then obviously he returned to F1. I think the closest recent encounter he got to a podium was that crazy Australia race in 2023 when there was like 3 red flags, a bunch of crashes on the restarts. There was 1 red flag with 4 to go. Everyone started driving through each other, and when they came in the pit lane, I think Hulkenberg was 3rd, but then they rearranged the order and he ends up 5th or 6th or something. That's the most recent close encounter to a podium he's had, but I think the biggest one was Brazil 2012, when he was on the pole for that race, had a really close call to getting a podium or even the win in that race. But who would have guessed that one day it would come with Sauber, the team that had such low expectations coming into the year. I think entering this race, I don't even know where they were in the constructors. I mean, right now they're up to 6th. So they were probably around 8th or 9th prior to this race. So it's not like they're consistent podium contenders. Now, they fight for points every once in a while. Last week, we saw Nico Hulkenberg's teammate, Gabriel Bortoleto, score his first career points. Hulkenberg has scored points this season. So it's not like Sauber is like way out of reach. Like this is some fluke podium. Like they've had some decent speed in terms of getting to the points. But the way the safety cars fell today, the way the strategy went, the way they made the calls to put the tires on at the right time, put Nico Hulkenberg in position. And once again, it's not like he was 45 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton and Lewis Hamilton kept on chopping the gap and just couldn't get there in time. There was a point in this race, Lewis Hamilton was right behind Nico Hulkenberg. He was within a second, and this was with DRS. When DRS was enabled, Nico Hulkenberg had less than a second to Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton got really close a couple times, never really made an attempt to pass because he never had the opportunity, but he was close enough. He was within a second for that second to last stint for the majority of it, or at least the last 15 laps or so of it, after Stroll and Hulkenberg battled a bit. And as a result, Lewis Hamilton pits first to the slick tires after the rain to try to, I guess, undercut. I mean, with the weather conditions, it just made everything so wacky. But that ended up kind of being counterproductive because they went from that 1 second range, and I think by the time they pitted, they fell to 2 seconds back off of Hulkenberg. They end up leaving the pits, and then Hulkenberg pits a couple laps later. Hulkenberg had like an 8 or 9 second gap to Hamilton. So ultimately, that Ferrari strategy call to come in early for the slick tires actually kind of backfired. Now, at the end of the day, they go from 4th to 4th. It's not like they lost anything, but the ultimate goal was to gain something there, to get Hamilton his first Ferrari podium. And who would have guessed that the guy to hold up Lewis Hamilton at his home race from his first podium with Ferrari would be Nico Hulkenberg in the Sauber? Nico Hulkenberg, I don't think made a mistake all day long, especially in that stint when he had to go chase down Lance Stroll, past Lance Stroll, when he had Lewis Hamilton on his tail. He didn't make any mistakes. He never went off track, never gave Hamilton an opportunity, never had to battle him side by side even. I mean, he drove perfectly this entire race. And that's ultimately how he ended up in P3. As I said, strategy calls were right. The safety cars fell at the right time. They had the right tires on at the right time. And ultimately, Hulkenberg drove a perfect race. And as a result, he's now on the list of Formula One podium sitters. Now let's go to our next thing. We got some controversy here. So Oscar Piastri passed Max Verstappen lap 6 or 7 of this race to get the lead. And it looked like it was going to be an Oscar Piastri win. Looked like he was going to run, well, maybe not run away with this thing with the chaos of this race, but safety cars came out, virtual safety cars came out. It was just a chaotic mess this entire race. And finally, there was one safety car where Piastri, and it was a little bit of a late call, I will say. I think, they usually give him a good chunk of notice, but I don't think they gave him much notice on this one. And I think that's the argument Piastri makes in terms of his penalty. But they're coming to that long kind of straight, I forget the name of the straight, before the winding right-hander, right before you enter the pits. And Piastri's got the lead. Verstappen's in second. Norris is in third. So Piastri's he's going at safety car speed, picks it up a little bit, and then all of a sudden he slams on the brakes. And of course, the track is really wet. He's spraying up a bunch of water. And then all of a sudden, Verstappen sees that he's braking. And he suddenly brakes because he can't pass him under the safety car. So he brakes. He makes a maneuver to the outside. And it wasn't like he had to go in the grass. But he had to go around Piastri in order to not rear end him. Because that's what would have happened. Well, as a result, the FIA, the stewards, whoever that is, they ultimately decided that this was a little bit too aggressive of an action under safety car, and they gave Piastri a 10-second penalty as a result. Obviously, Oscar Piastri, the championship leader, did not agree with this call. After the race, he had some, I was going to say strong comments, but he really said, "I'm not going to comment," which is a strong comment in itself. So obviously he's upset. Why would he not be? He just got a penalty. He's in a close championship fight with his teammates. According to the document, it says that he slowed down from 218 kilometers an hour to 52 kilometers an hour. And they reference that car number 1, Verstappen, had to make an evasive action. I think if I had to guess the biggest factor in this, yes, he did brake really heavily. And yes, I could see them giving the fact that it's a safety car, there's still yellow flags out, but at the same time, the safety car is ending, so they're about to go racing. So theoretically, everything ahead should be cleared out. There shouldn't be any marshals on the track. There shouldn't be anyone doing anything on the track theoretically, but it's still technically safety car conditions. That could be an argument there for the heavy braking, at least, like if they were to crash. We saw it at, I think it was Mugello or was that the same place? Mugello, one of the fourth Italian tracks they ran in 2020 to make up for races in COVID. There was a massive stack up under a safety car when they started doing the accelerate, brake, and like the mid-pack started running over each other. There was a huge crash at the start-finish line. They had to red flag the thing. Cars were driving over each other. Like, it can get really nasty. It can get really ugly. So I understand why they would give him a penalty here, because it's under safety car, it's heavy braking, it stacks everyone up, it's wet conditions, it's hard enough to see as is. But 10 seconds feels a little harsh, I would say. Like, 10 seconds is usually what you get for wiping someone out. Like, last week at Austria, Yuki Tsunoda wipes out an Alpine, like just completely obliterates him. That was a 10-second penalty. No one was taken out here. No one was crashed. No one even got damaged. Once again, I understand giving him a penalty. Maybe even just a warning. Start off with a warning. But a 10-second penalty is a bit harsh if you ask me. 5 seconds, maybe. Maybe. So I could understand a penalty, a small penalty. I would have gone with a warning or like a, hey, you do that again, we're going to hit you with a bigger penalty, or like a really big penalty. But 10 seconds seems a bit harsh, and obviously it ends up impacting the result of the race because Oscar Piastri led the majority of this race. However, his teammate Lando Norris was within 4 or 5 seconds the majority of the stint that Piastri led once Verstappen spun out. Of course, they end up pitting, switching to the slick tires. Piastri has to serve that 10-second penalty, and well, that did it. Lando Norris gets the lead. He comes out of the pits with about a 6-second lead. Piastri was able to close it to about 4, but couldn't do anything with it. So you could also, I feel like another argument for Piastri would be, not in terms of the penalty itself, but in terms of strategy. There were still people struggling a lot on that slick tire late. Like, maybe they could have stayed out a couple extra laps, try to make up some time while Lando struggled. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. But yeah, once again, I understand maybe a little bit of a penalty or at the very least a warning because it was aggressive braking. It was under a safety car and it was raining quite a lot. Just 10 seconds seems a lot for nothing, like no crashes, no damage. So yeah, a little bit confused on 10 seconds. But as a result, Lando Norris picks up his first home win. He has cut the championship lead to, let's see if I got it here, 8 points. He has cut the lead to 8 whole points on teammate Oscar Piastri, just when it seemed like Piastri was on a bit of a hot streak there, had really closed in on Lando Norris had pulled away a little bit in terms of the championship. Lando Norris these last couple of weeks has closed it back in. Of course, there was that incident at Canada where Norris just drove into the back of Piastri. Back-to-back wins for Lando Norris ends up closing that gap to single digits. Obviously, a couple-week break here before we go to Spa, but big for Lando Norris. Also, the fact that it's a home win for him. I think any driver would want to win their home race. That would be the top of their list. So for Lando Norris to pick up another win here, to pick up more points on Piastri, obviously a very big deal. And to do it at his home race, obviously a big deal. A 1-2 for McLaren. Nevertheless, despite the Piastri penalty, they were still far and away the best team this weekend. There was really no contest in terms of the win. It was going to be a McLaren car unless they wrecked. And ultimately, they drove a fine race. Obviously, there was the Piastri penalty. And once again, that was a bit of a controversial penalty. The gap ends up being 6.8 seconds. You could argue if it was a 5-second penalty, they would be about even, but hypotheticals. Nico Hulkenberg ends up finishing third. Nico Hulkenberg finally gets a podium. We've discussed it already, but wow. I don't think anyone saw Nico Hulkenberg getting a podium with SAUBER this year, but he's done it. He's finally scored a podium. SAUBER gets a podium. What a day for them. I mean, seriously, they move up to 6th in the Constructors. This is a massive day for SAUBER, Nico Hulkenberg. Everyone's talking about McLaren winning. Lando wins his home race, but that's kind of expected with how good McLaren is. Nico Hulkenberg just scored a podium with SAUBER, so I think that's something to celebrate. Lewis Hamilton's streak of 12 straight home podiums comes to an end as he finishes 4th with Ferrari. Ultimately, just couldn't chase down Hulkenberg, couldn't make the pass on Hulkenberg even when he was there. They finished 4th. They ran 4th like the entire day despite all the chaos. Maybe they fell back for a bit there to 7th or something, but for the most part in this setting, they were 4th. Max Verstappen 5th. He led the first 6 or 7 laps. Outside of that, he ran 2nd. Then one of those restarts, it might have been the restart that Piastri did all the braking stuff. Yeah, he spins out, falls back to 10th, is able to rally back to 5th, so a good chunk of points, but Red Bull's just a disaster, right? They really are a disaster right now. Pierre Gasly 6th, good chunk of points for Alpine. Lance Stroll was in contention for a podium at one point in this race. He was in the podium places for a good little slip there, but 7th, good chunk of points for him. He gains on the teammate battle with him and Fernando Alonso, so that's quite something. Anywho, Albon 8th, Alonso 9th, so that's double points for Aston Martin. George Russell 10th, not the prettiest race from Mercedes. They were like the first ones to come in and get the slick tires at the end of this race, and they just struggled massively. Russell spun at one point. Yeah, that was a struggle of a race for them. Behrman 11th, Sainz, Ocon. Charles Leclerc never had a shot in this race. They put him on the slick tires before the race even began, and it went horribly wrong. They could never make up time on those on the intermediate tires, and as a result, it started raining. Or not as a result, but it started raining again before the slick tires could actually be an advantage. And at that point, they were pinned in 15th, and they only get up to 14th. Yuki Tsunoda, and then we got all our DNFs. We got Kimi Antonelli, Isaac Hadjar, Gabriel Bortoletto, Liam Lawson, Franco Colapinto. I don't think Colapinto even got on the track. So, yeah, it was an ugly race. It was a sloppy race because of all the rain. Has hit something back there. But, yeah, thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. We got NASCAR at Chicago in an hour and a half. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun.